For the first time, members of a DEA task force are speaking about the investigation and capture of one of the most dangerous men Memphis has ever known. This man, a drug dealer with ties to Mexican cartels.
His name is Craig Petties. A lot of you are going, oh yeah. He's serving 9 life sentences in the federal pen for murder, conspiracy, drug trafficking, bunch of charges.
For those who don't know, many remember this man as the biggest drug lord in America at one time.
And he took that route that a lot of these guys do and became one of the biggest drug dealers connected to that cartel in Mexico.
His name is Craig Petties. Former DEA agent Abe Collins says at one point in time, he was the biggest drug trafficker in America based right here in Memphis.
That's why Judge Samuel Mays gave Craig Petties not 1, but 9 life sentences. The U.S. District Attorney's Office says this is the largest drug case ever in Tennessee. 9 life, Joyce. That's why Judge Samuel Mays gave Craig Petties not 1, but 9 life sentences. The U.S. District Attorney's Office says this is the largest drug case ever in Tennessee. Multiple murders, a ton of drugs, and countless lives ruined. Craig Petties, one of the largest suppliers of cocaine and marijuana to Memphis and other cities across the country. He shipped millions of dollars worth of drugs from Mexico for years.
We as a whole in the community have been victimized by this organization.
Show your face. Show your face, please, with sugar on top.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Y'all know my slogan. I don't know it all, but I know what I've been through. Now, before we get into this video, please make sure you head on down to Instagram and follow us on our official Instagram page at Hookah Anonymous _. We're able to be a little more explicit, a little more uncensored, and share content freely without running the risk of having our channel terminated. So, once again, make sure you head on down to Instagram and follow us on our official Instagram page at Hookah Anonymous _. We're almost at 100,000 subscribers. So if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell so you're notified every time we drop new content. Now let's get into what you guys came here to see. Now, today we're going to head on down to Memphis, where some of the most notorious hustlers of all hustlers stem from. Due to Yo Gotti blowing up in the music industry, a lot of people have become familiar with the Eric Bovin and the Bovin brothers story due to their affiliation with Yo Gotti's family, and they made a lot of money hailing out of Memphis. It was reported that at the height of their run, Eric Bovin himself was generating hundreds of thousands of dollars weekly. And although the Bovin family don't get as much recognition as the Big Meeches and the BMFs, a lot of kingpins made a lot of money too. They just wasn't known to the world as much as Big Meech and BMF. One of those guys who started from the very bottom coming out of Memphis happens to be Craig Petties. Craig started as a low-level nickel and dime hustler who worked for others but climbed the ranks fast and is known as one of the biggest to do it coming out of Memphis. Craig's story is interesting because he wasn't your typical hustler or kingpin who just had ties to someone that had ties to the cartel, so he got it for cheap. Craig Petties himself had ties to the cartel family, which made him stand out from everyone else. Meeting the plug himself enabled him to establish a relationship where he was trusted and had access to work that the average dealer couldn't get their hands on for a very, very low price. Now just know that meeting the plug is only the beginning. Most people want to meet the plug and think they're ready for that type of lifestyle, but not everybody is even fit to do so. This is because meeting the plug is a very intimidating action, and a simple disagreement can lead to you not leaving whatever island you just traveled to meet this plug. Just know that anything you say is studied thoroughly by the plug and his men, who are armed and ready to take your life at a head nod if the plug feels that you aren't moving right for whatever reason. Keep in mind that you went to him, and that already puts you at a disadvantage. 9 times out of 10, when you go to meet him, it's in an island or empty secluded space away from the city, and somewhere where nobody will find you if something was to happen. So for guys like Craig Petties and Frank Lucas, who made it their business to cut the middleman out and have direct ties to the plug, these are the dangerous games that they played. However, it was a success for them because it allowed them to make millions of dollars, but in the end, they paid a very hefty price for their actions as well. Now, one of the reasons that Craig Petties may not get the type of spotlight that a lot of other kingpins get is because at the end of his reign, it's rumored that he cooperated with law enforcement. And y'all know, as they say, no matter what you did in the past, once you cooperate, all of that is now null and void. However, it's not 100% confirmed that he told because a lot of his case files have been sealed. But the feds would tell the public that he crumbled after being extradited from Mexico. However, with 9 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, makes people wonder how did he snitch if he wasn't given a break with his sentencing. With a reign from the mid-90s that lasted until 2008, we're going to get into the story that took Craig Petties from a low-level dealer to an international trafficker, being one of the first black dealers to deal directly with a Mexican cartel group. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button so we can get this video into the algorithm and spread awareness. If you aren't already subscribed to the platform, make sure you do so now. Let's get into it. Craig Petties, aka Little C, was born December 11th, 1976 in South Memphis, where he grew up in the Riverside section of the Bluff City. Craig was brought up with his sister and is also half-brothers with Memphis rapper DJ Paul, who was a part of the infamous Memphis rap group 3 6 Mafia. The two shared the same father and had different mothers. The area Craig grew up in bred pimps and known drug dealers, all of which who the kids had to look up to as they grew up in a rough neighborhood. This is what led Craig down the same path, as the people he's seen driving the best cars and admired by their peers were all selling illegal substances. In the late 1980s, at a very young age, the crack epidemic would hit, and like most kids in urban neighborhoods, they seen a shot at some quick money. Craig would begin selling small amounts of drugs. Nothing too crazy, but this would lead to the start of Craig's legal trouble in the streets. Craig's first arrest would come at just 15 years old in 1992, when he would be charged for weapon possession. This came after Craig and a friend would be in the house messing with a sawed-off shotgun that they just had purchased. Being young and unaware, they discharged the shotgun mistakenly, which could have ended one of their lives, but fortunately for them, it didn't. Out of panic, it's said that Craig was the one that called the cops on himself. For what reason? Nobody knows. But when the police arrived to the house and questioned Craig about the weapon, Craig would tell them that he had it to protect himself from would-be robbers. The police wasn't falling for it, and Craig was arrested at the age of 15. In 1993, at the age of 16, Craig was also arrested twice for selling drugs, but was never convicted for it for whatever reason. I'll assume that it's because he was still considered a minor, and they were just cutting him a break due to his age. But the third time he was arrested happened to be a little more serious and come just days before his 17th birthday. Craig would be arrested for attempted M after he was accused of shooting an individual by the name of Eric Cole with a group of friends when they spotted him on a summer day. Luckily for Craig, no charges will be filed against him after the victim Eric will identify someone else as the suspect that shot him. However, at that time, police wanted to try Craig as an adult, which would have made the crime punishable by a sentence of up to 20 years. But instead, the adult courts declined police's suggestion and was sending the case back to juvenile court, where Craig Petties dodged a bullet. Craig left school by the time he was 16, so after he was released from juvie, the only place left for him was the streets, in which the streets welcomed him with open arms. In 1995, by the time he was 18 years old, he began to get deeper and deeper into the streets. In March of that same year, he would have his big break when a local kingpin would get locked up by the police. The drug dealer was arrested in a Chevy Lumina that was transporting a $500,000 stashed in a secret compartment within the vehicle. The vehicle was later impounded with the $500,000 still inside and was kept impounded by MPD. Craig's cousin by the name of Antonio Allen, aka Big Wayne, would be contacted by the local kingpin to retrieve the money and told him if he did, he would give him a cut for doing so. Big Wayne agreed. The only problem is Big Wayne was big. So we got a group of kids from around the way to help with the plot. Amongst those local group of guys were Craig Petties. Craig, who was just 130 pounds and 5'5" at the time, was perfect for the job. So him, along with another individual, proceeded to get a ladder and place it against the fence jumping over and gaining access into the impound. Once they were inside, they located the Chevy Lumina and was able to retrieve the $500,000 and then made it out successfully as Big Wayne and another individual watched from a distance. Now, I'm not sure how the impounds work in Memphis, but usually it's a little more complicated to get access to an impound, especially a police one. Either it's a bunch of barbed wire wrapping the fence, or they have a bunch of dogs inside, or sometimes they have both. This is done to make sure events like this don't happen, protecting the vehicles and assuring outsiders don't get access to those vehicles. Now, after retrieving the money was a success, as y'all know, it's no honor amongst thieves, because instead of giving the money to the local kingpin who was locked up, Big Wayne and the guys decided to keep the money. Big Wayne will also get greedy as well, because Craig was promised $100,000 for his role, but when it was all said and done, he was only given $50,000. However, given the least out of the money, Craig made the most out of it, because unlike the other guys who bought materialistic items such as jewelry and clothes and balled out, Craig would buy himself a Cadillac and give his mother some money as well. The rest he would use that to jumpstart his drug dealing empire, purchasing large quantities of marijuana and CC for wholesale. During this time, Craig kept flipping his money by buying large quantities of drugs, making profits, and reinvesting into his empire. He surpassed all the local dealers, and with money came power, which also led to him climbing the ranks of the GDs, aka Gangster Disciples, in Memphis. Part of his crew was two cousins by the name of Goldie and M. Both cousins were his hitman and was his most loyal affiliates within his team. At just the age 22, Craig was making a lot of money, but not everybody agreed with the way he was making his money. The type of money he was making, anyone would fall in line and look the other way in hopes of benefiting in some way, shape, or form. But Craig's own mother knew that his money was illegally obtained, and when he offered to buy her a big house in a new location, she declined. She opted to stay in her small home in South Memphis that wasn't worth no more than $20,000 at the time. However, this didn't stop Craig himself from purchasing a $2.3 million home down in Las Vegas. Craig also had a lineup of cars that included a Bentley Flying Spur that was valued at almost $400,000 and a Benz worth $112,000. He also brought another house in the suburban neighborhood of Hickory Hill, located in the southeast part of Memphis. Keep in mind that this was all at the tender age of just 22 years old. What was you doing at the age 22? Now, by 23 years old in the year 2000, Craig's operation has expanded to a very large scale when he would meet affiliates of the Beltran-Leyva cartel. Purchasing 200 pounds of marijuana and 10 keys from them, he was trafficking between 8 states with the help of other CC and marijuana traffickers where they prep and package drugs. These states included Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Mississippi, Missouri, Texas, North Carolina, and the proceeds were taken back to Mexico to the cartel captain. After acquiring so much success at such a young age, the guys who Craig was copping from was impressed with how fast he was able to sell product and come back for more. It got to the point where Craig was copping so much work, the cartel members decided to take him straight to the source in Texas, located in the city of Corpus Christi. And that's where Craig's career as a kingpin will really start to take off. When he reached Corpus Christi, Texas, he was introduced to the cartel boss Edgar Villarreal, aka La Barbie, who ran the Beltran-Leyva cartel with an iron fist. Don't be fooled by the name, which was given to him by his high school football coach due to how Edgar looked, as his coach would say he had Ken doll-like features, green eyes, similar to a Ken doll. Now, Edgar was a rare case because he looked Caucasian, although he was actually full-blown Mexican, but could fool anybody who thought otherwise. Now, while Craig was in Texas, he hung with La Barbie and his cartel affiliates, and during that time, La Barbie introduced Craig to the drug funneling routes used by specific cartel groups in order to get it across American borders. These routes was located in Laredo, where La Barbie himself grew up as a child. For the ones that are unfamiliar with the cartel and drug funneling methods and tactics that they use, each cartel groups have their own particular routes and passageways used to smuggle drugs into the United States. These territories are well protected by members of the cartel groups, to assure that rivals don't come in and take over their routes. Losing a route means you're losing money, and cartel groups are willing to go to war over these gateways. While in Texas, LaBarbie wanted to make sure Craig was everything him and his affiliate said he was, so as a quick test, he gave him a quick 10 keys to see how he would do with them. And with Craig being Craig, he got rid of them in no time. LaBarbie was impressed and automatically knew that Craig was someone he needed to keep close. He profited so much because at the time, he was one of the first black dealers to associate directly with the Mexican cartel. This didn't only solidify that Craig can make them a whole lot of money, but it was also showing LaBarbie that he could also be trusted. Since then, LaBarbie welcomed Craig in like he was one of their own. Everything was history after, because shortly after LaBarbie and Craig became locked in, Craig quickly became a multi-millionaire in just his early 20s. Having such ties meant more product for Craig, and more product meant that he had to think of more ways to receive and smuggle the product. Craig had a bunch of business fronts for his drug trade, such as an auto repair shop and a trucking company. The tractor trailers were only used for smuggling purposes and was often offloaded at gas stations and taken to nearby stash houses where they were prepped for sale. Greg and his organization was bringing in millions of dollars weekly. And yes, I said millions of dollars weekly. It was at a point that Craig was making so much money, reports said that he sent $10 million to LaBarbie in Mexico just to hold for him down there just in case anything ever went wrong. Now here's the reason people feel Craig Petties was bigger than Big Meech. In a nutshell, if you're the one who's supplying someone with product behind the scenes, most likely you're the plug. Therefore, you'll be considered bigger than them because the supplier is the one that supplies the product for the dealer. So according to a man by the name of Torrance Hill, Craig Petties was the one supplying Big Meech and the BMF crew. Torrance would be the bridge between Craig and BMF, as he was partners with Craig, responsible for supplying BMF. He was from Georgia, the same stomping grounds where BMF will make their name. Torrance would get into his own legal troubles, and it was within his own case where he testified that he supplied product to members of the BMF organization through Craig. Torrance's operation during his time would gross up to $9 million every month. Sheesh. Well, if he was making $9 million a month, just imagine how much Craig Petties was making, because he will also testify that the product he was selling to BMF, he got from Craig Petties. Torrance testified that in 2003, he was receiving up to 500 keys a month from Craig. Now get this. Torrance will also testify that he got as much as 2,500 keys at once through Craig Petties and his cartel connections. Not over a course of time, but 2,500 keys at just one time. Now, to put that into perspective, if each key was going for $10,000, 2,500 of them wholesale would be valued at $25 million. And if he was getting it for $20,000 a key, that'll make it worth $50 million. So that should tell you how much money Craig was making, as well as Torrance and BMF. But once again, this is why people will say that Craig was bigger than Big Meech, because Craig was supplying the source that was supplying them. Now don't get it confused. If you tapped into the BMF and their story, you know that guys such as J-Bo, who was a notorious BMF member, stated that they had more than one plug. Now when one connect would be down and out, they wouldn't wait around and would oftenly use other connects. So despite Big Meech saying that he never seen or personally did business with Craig during an interview,
man, come on, man. How can you put me with this dude? I'm bigger than any plug I ever had, man. I never messed with this dude ever in life, man. I don't know him. We might have ran across each other's paths. I'm not saying that we maybe didn't run across each other's paths, but I don't remember it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But we definitely never did no business illegally together. You know what I'm saying? We never done no business. I never shot with this man out of Memphis, Tennessee.
It doesn't mean that they weren't using his product through a source without their knowledge. In this case, that source would be Torrance Hill. Now, many times we hear of these guys' downfall, and it usually involves reasons stemming from the illegal things that they were into. Ironically, although there was violence and a lot of drugs that covered Craig's tracks when it came to his empire, he would go down in an unthinkable way that had nothing to do with the streets. but more so his personal life. In April of 2001, Craig and his girlfriend at the time got into an altercation where she called the police and alleged that Craig put his hands on her. Police would arrive to the residence for an investigation of a domestic dispute between Craig and his girlfriend. While they were there, they would spot a little blunt that consisted of marijuana burning in the ashtray. Keep in mind that I said this was in 2001 because now you're able to have a certain amount of marijuana and it's also been approved for recreational use. But back in 2001, it was still illegal to possess, and the marijuana in the ashtray is what gave police probable cause to now begin searching the house. Well, during their search, police will find 650 pounds of marijuana in 3 duffel bags stored in a closet. Now, although Craig was into CC and selling harsher substances, a pound alone of marijuana is enough to make police suspicious. Now, 650 of them would make them more than suspicious, and now law enforcement will realize that Craig isn't just some low-level street corner hustler. But keep in mind, the whole domino effect stemmed from a physical altercation with his girlfriend. After that, everything would go downhill. Everyone in the house was arrested after the pounds were found, and Craig's bond was set at $250,000. That was a drop in the bucket for Craig, and to this day, no one knows how the charges pertaining to the 650 pounds were dropped. But my guess is, as soon as he bonded out on that high amount, on top of all the pounds that was found, they knew that they had someone bigger than they thought. And maybe dropping the charges, law enforcement figured Craig would lead them to bigger fish and wanted to investigate him for more. So they released him so they could track him. Prior to this, Craig and his organization managed to stay off the police radar for a whole 6 years while they moved large amounts of product underneath their radar. But it seems like that one situation was the beginning to an end. In June of 2002, officers raided a home in Bartlett area of Memphis where they found 38 keys of CC that had a street value of almost $1 million in the attic. The home was somehow linked to Craig and his organization, which led law enforcement to go check it out. During the raid, they was also able to recover $50,000 in cash, weapons, and an armored vest. After this raid, the discoveries were enough for the federal government to indict Craig Petties in November of 2002 and hit him and his organization with RICO charges. This indictment was based off beliefs that Craig and his organization had become one of the biggest and most dominant suppliers of marijuana and CC in Memphis. This led Craig and his organization to be investigated by the Memphis Police Department, the Shelby County Sheriff's Department, the Olive Branch Police Department, the United States Marshal Service, and the Drug Enforcement Administration. At this point, Craig sees that it's just a matter of time before the feds come and get him, and he figured he'll skip town to get a head start on his escape. This is when he'll go to Mexico and hide out with Lil Barbie. Looks like the $10 million he sent down there made sense now because Craig was now on the run. But the millions wouldn't matter because Craig would continue running his organization from Mexico from a cell phone, a few cell phones. And in fact, his empire now grew because he was now closer to the plug and was able to still call the shots from Mexico, where he would hide out for the next 5 years. During the course of time, Craig and his affiliates switched phones and phone numbers to avoid wiretaps from law enforcement. Craig was also paying off corrupted Mexican officials that tipped him off. So every time police would move in to catch him, he would relocate. By 2004, Craig was labeled most wanted on a 45-count indictment and ranked number 15 on the U.S. Marshals list. He even appeared on the television series America's Most Wanted. The walls would begin closing in and Craig knew it. So at this time, he began tossing all of his cell phone. One indication where he knew something was wrong was the same Mexican officials he was paying off to tip him on anything concerning his name stopped accepting his money. At this time, Craig was way too hot, being on the most wanted list at number 15, and Mexican officials wanted nothing to do with him. Now honestly, if you ask me, I wonder why Craig just didn't stop running the organization when he moved out to Mexico. He already had $10 million stash that he sent previously, so money wasn't the object. Matters seemed to get worse for him, and when he moved to Mexico, that was just time he should have got out the game and called it quits. Now we also know that sometimes in the cartel, once you're in, there's no getting out. So I don't know if that played a factor, but at this point, it was just a matter of time before Craig would get caught up, and that's exactly what happened. In 2005, law enforcement was able to infiltrate Craig's organization and sent an officer in to buy a bunch of product from members of Craig's organization. Calls between Craig and his guys were also intercepted and recorded. This would include Craig and his affiliates discussing getting people whacked, including the same officer who was able to purchase product from members in the organization. Everyone associated with Craig started getting indicted, including his hitmen that were cousins, as well as guys who were associated with him, but not in his crew in particular. The feds were given more and more information as associates were getting locked up because they began cooperating and giving the ins and outs of the organization. In 2007, law enforcement caught wind that Craig was hiding south of the border in the Mexican state of Querétaro, buying a home in the upscale Milenio 3 subdivision of Santiago de Querétaro, Mexico. Craig was living the life. He was protected by the Mexican cartel and equipped with a personal chef, a maid, nanny, personal trainer, and armed guards. But it wasn't until January 10th, 2008, when it was all over and Craig, who was 31 years old at the time, was finally captured. Law enforcement would close in on the home while helicopters hovered and snipers took the roof of nearby homes. During the time of his arrest, he was home with his wife, Latosha Booker, and their 5 children, 3 of which was born in Mexico under fake names. Craig's 17-year run has finally seen an end. Although he was caught, 17 years as a kingpin is a lot longer than most of these kingpins we often hear about. Craig was extradited from Mexico to Houston, where he was picked up by U.S. federal agents. Immediately, Craig was questioned about his organization, along with the business he had with the cartel, but Craig played hardball and wouldn't say a word. This was until federal agents would remind Craig that 3 of his youngest kids under the age of 5, who was born in Mexico, wouldn't be allowed to enter the United States by Mexican border agents. At that point, rumor has it that Craig cracked and made a deal to get information from Craig in exchange for his children to be brought back to the United States. However, these files of Craig saying anything can't be found, and most believe that is because it was sealed. Craig was held in a federal correctional institution in Memphis, where he was interrogated for information, and agents even offered to change his name in prison and put his family in a witness protection program. However, Craig knows that it's nothing they can do if the cartel wanted him and his family gone, and simply responded to the agents by saying, quote, "Wherever you put me, they'll unalive me." By December of 2009, Craig secretly pleaded guilty to 19 charges, including drug trafficking, racketeering, money laundering, and orchestrating 4 deaths that came out of his organization. For some strange reason, the plea wasn't made aware to the public until February of 2011. Initially, Craig took his case to trial and it was scheduled for September 21st, 2012, but they pushed it back until November 19th of that month. At first, he faced a death penalty for being behind 6 deaths and life for racketeering charges. When it was all said and done, on August 22nd, 2013, Craig was sentenced to 9 life sentences in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Many say that Craig is a snitch, but whatever he told them clearly didn't hold no weight because he wasn't given a bit of leniency. Now rumor has it, just like the person that put him on, Craig ruled his empire with an iron fist and resorted to violence when it came to maintaining his stronghold on his crew. Rivals, friends, and even family members were no exception when it came to violence if you crossed Craig. This is for anybody that stole money, drugs, customers, connects. He made an example out of you. It was no stranger in doing so. Craig was accused of taking the life of his own cousin, Big Wayne. This is the same cousin that got him started on his first big come up that actually helped him become who he was, even though he was given less than he was promised. Although Craig wasn't the one accused of pulling the trigger, the hitmen who actually did it told law enforcement that they was instructed by Craig to take Big Wayne's life because Craig felt Big Wayne was going to cooperate against him, in which some say it wasn't even true, meaning that Big Wayne literally lost his life for nothing. But some say it was true, but it's controversial. In the end, Craig denied any involvement in the hit. Now in 2002, Craig gave orders to take the life of his own cousin Antonio Allen by putting $100,000 on his head, allegedly. An associate by the name of Tobias Pride would be the one to take the hit, despite him also being friends with Craig's cousin Allen for 16 years. Rumor has it that the president of a local bail bond company inexplicably told Craig that Big Wayne was providing police with information. So on April 21st, 2002, Allen opened the door to his Buick at his residence when he was ambushed by his friend Tobias Pride. He had been hiding behind a bush and jumped out firing weapons from both hands. After getting rid of both weapons, Pride returned back to the scene just to confirm that Big Wayne was dead. As for Craig's connect, LaBarbie himself, he was taken into custody in 2010, and by 2018, LaBarbie was sentenced to 49 years in prison despite him himself trying to cooperate. He was taken down on charges of money laundering and CC distribution. Theory has it that they took so long to sentence him because LaBarbie was on the fence about cooperating, and by the time he decided to tell all, it was information that the feds no longer needed from him. Now, one of the key things that stuck out to me the most in this whole story was how he was able to get away with trafficking for so long and made a whole bunch of money only for the whole thing to crumble over a dispute with his wife. The crazy part about it is, the same woman that called the police and it led to them finding the 3 duffel bags in the closet is the same one that was there in the end when he got caught in Mexico. But just knowing that everything went down the drain due to that one situation is mind-boggling. If you're in the street and you know you out here moving wrong, sometimes in situations you have to think for others. Here it is, he had 650 pounds in the closet and would get into it with his girlfriend at the time. Now, I know sometimes our emotions can get the best of us, but you have to put intellect over emotion and realize that there's a bigger risk and a lot to lose in certain situations. And that's exactly what happened, and he lost big time. So y'all jump in the comments and let me know what y'all think about this. This is actually an interesting story. We don't hear too much about him, but for the level that he was at, he had a pretty long run. Now, when it comes to BMF, they only had a run of what, 3-4 years, or I think less than that. I'm not sure, don't quote me. But this man had a run of 17 years, they say. 18, 17, one of them. Just a very long time, man, to be on top, and for it all the crumble due to a situation that, was with his wife is actually ironic. We hear about the Alpos, we hear about all the other guys that actually told, but we never really hear about guys like this that had a long run. And although he told, or it's controversial that he told, it's really no proof because they say the documents were sealed. But I guess we would never know what he told, or who he told them. Now, it's a lot of Big Meech and Craig Petties comparisons, and the reason why it's like that, because he was at an all-time high. Like, he was connected to the Cartel, and he was just as bigger or bigger than Big Meech. The only thing is, a lot of people cancel him out because they say that he told. So, like I said in the story, they say he was bigger than Big Meech. He was the one supplying it. It was actually confirmed by somebody, but we don't know. Big Meech said he never saw him a day in his life, and he don't know him. But if he had connections to the cartel the way they explain, and making millions weekly or daily, that's crazy. Y'all jump in the comments, let me know what y'all think about this. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell so you're notified every time we drop new content. And remember, as long as you keep on watching, I'm going to keep on dropping. And I'm out.